Yeah. All right, that is correct. It is possible for percents to be over 100. We'll talk about some different types of examples where you'll see percents go over 100. But yes, it is possible for percents to be over 100. Okay, so when trying to solve a problem involving percent, one way that you can do that is by setting up and solving a proportion. There's pros and cons to this method. People like this method because it's organized. Every time you solve it the same way. And it's a nice way to set up take your information, organize it, and solve the problem. So the percent proportion has, I guess you could call this kind of like a little formula. Every time you solve a problem involving percents, if you use a proportion, it's going to be set up like this. The part over the whole, just like a fraction, okay? And like Noah was mentioning, sometimes the numerator is greater than the denominator, just depending on the problem. The part over the whole, and then the percent is over 100, okay? So every time you set up a proportion, it's going to follow this format. Your job is to figure out where the numbers go, okay? And which is the missing information, and then we solve it. So let's take a look at our first example. This is on your notes. Like I said, it's in that middle row. It's the first one. What number is 37.5% of 485 or 484? Now, like I said, you've learned strategies previously for solving problems like this, I'm sure. I am showing you how to do this using a proportion, and this is how I want you to do tonight's homework. Okay? Where do you think the 37.5 would go in this proportion? Write it. On top of the 100. You got it. Because it's a percent. The percent symbol kind of gives that away. And the percent always goes above the 100. Okay? I'll put this over here. So we have that as a reminder. Where would the 484 go? Would it go on top or on the bottom of the left-hand side? Go ahead, Isabella. It is going to go on the bottom, yes. So this is going to go on the bottom. And we are missing the top, which is the part. Before we solve it, can anybody help us determine, like, is there any kind of information or clues in the statement of the question that help us decide where the 484 goes? Like, how do you know that it goes on the bottom? Olivia. Because it says of 484. Go ahead, Ryder. Do you want to add to that? It doesn't have a percentage, so we know it's not going to go over here. So that's one clue. And then to decide if it goes on the top, if it's the part or the whole, as Olivia said, if it says of 484, that's like saying it's out of 484. So like if you took a test that was out of 484 points, the 484 would go on the bottom. Okay, that's your total, that's the whole. So this is our setup. Any questions about that? Okay, now at this point, because we spent almost all of last chapter solving these types of problems, proportions, we should all know how to solve these, right? Did you learn how to do this? Yeah. Yes. All right, so just a reminder, and I did actually show you guys a couple ways to solve these, if you remember way back earlier on in chapter 5. But one way, some of you guys are using the cross multiplying method. And if you are, I'm just going to review real quick how to do that. If you're using a different method, you can continue to use that same method that you've been using. So 484 times 37.5, which is 18,150. And then 100 times x, which is, you have to figure out what number times 100 would also equal 18,150. So we divide by 100, and we get that x is equal to 181.5. Okay, so you multiply the two numbers that you do know, and then you divide by the number that is diagonal from the x. That is the cross multiplying method that we learned in the last chapter. Any questions about solving these? Or solving this one? All right, let's try the next one. So this one is a little bit different. It says 24 is 120% of what number? So before we even start this, we know a few things. Our percent is over 100, so our numerator is going to be greater than our whole, which is the denominator. Okay, because where our percent is over 100, that means, like let's say on a test or something, if you got a bonus, your score is actually greater than the total score because you did an extra credit or a bonus or something like that. So that's an example of when this might happen. All right, where would the 24 go? Go ahead, Noah.
The top left.
Top left is correct. Yep, that's the hard one. The 120 is the percent, so we know that that's going to go over the 100. But that's the hard part. How do I know that the 24 should go on top and not the bottom? Go ahead,
Because it's not like the full number, it's just like part of the number.
Okay, yeah, that's the part. Is there anybody see any clues that can help us tell us that 24 is the part? It's hard to explain, I know. It's kind of hard to word it. Go ahead, Gloria.
It says of what number?
Okay, so if we go back to what Olivia said earlier about the of, what anything that comes after the word of is the whole. So it's saying 24 is 120% of out of what? So that means we don't know what it's out of, which is what goes on the bottom. Okay, or another clue is that it says 24 is 120%, which means the 24 and the 120 are both on top. The 24 is the 120%. Okay, so that's our setup. Go ahead and solve this one. I'm just going to tell you what you should get and make sure you can get that. X is 20. So give that a try. Make sure you know how to get x equals 20. If you are not sure, raise your hand or type it in the chat.
Why do you point at me?
What?
Point at me.
I just went like this. Okay, so make sure you can solve that. See if you get x equals 20. Let me know if you are set. That's great. Got it? Got it?
Question.
Uh-huh. That's right.
I'm setting it up, right?
You're good. All right, so we're only going to do one more example together. And then I have a few I want you guys to try on your own. So we're going to do one more. And this one says 4 is what percent of 5? So in this question, we're missing the percentage of the problem. Yes, Evan?
80.
So if some like fifths are a commonly used fraction. So yeah, If you're familiar with fifths as decimals, you could probably do this one in your head. Evan said 80, which is correct. Just to set this up, where would the 4 go? Top left. Where would the 5 go? Ryder? Huh? Bottom? Yeah, because see how it says what percent? We don't know the percent. So the percent always goes over 100, and if we don't know the percent, the X is then what goes over 100. Okay? So that's our setup for this one. Go ahead and solve it. Now, since the question here is asking for a percent, you want to make sure your answer has a percent sign with it. Okay? So if it's asking for a percent, make sure you're giving a percent. Okay? So that is this one, 80%. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, here's what I'd like for you guys to do. With your scratch paper, now since we have been solving proportions for the last several weeks, I'm actually just going to have you set these up. Don't worry about solving and actually getting the answer. I just want to see how you're going to set them up. Okay, so I have 3 questions, like 6 altogether. 3 on this page, 3 on the next page. So what I want you guys to do is just write out how you would set up these proportions. And for you guys at home, you're going to type them in the chat as you figure them out. And I'll do the first one with you guys for those of you at home so you can see how to type it. You're going to do, so it says 45 is 60% of what? So you're going to type 45 over X equals 60 over 100. Okay? All right, so that's the first one. I did it for you. But that's how you guys at home are going to type your answers with the slash instead of for the fraction bar. Okay? So since I just did the first one for you guys, go ahead and start.
I can't really see it.
Go ahead and start with the second one and type your answers. Make sure you have my screen pinned so it's nice and big. Hopefully turning off the light helped a bit with the visual. Oh, you know. Yeah. I have a couple more I want you to do.
What do you guys think with that?
On a piece of scratch paper, like it had on the board at the beginning, you just
Okay.
have scratch paper. All right, for this second one, the percent is pretty simple. It goes over the 100 every time. That's the part that most people get right. The hard part is the part in the hole. Where would the 200 go on this one? Top or bottom? Ryder, go ahead. Bottom. Good. So that's number 2. And for the last one, we don't have a percent. So that's where the X goes. Is this one 40 over 5 or 5 over 40, do you think? Caroline?
5 over 40.
Yes, good. Be careful. I see a lot of people tempted to just put them in order, top over bottom, because they like to just like look at the numbers and put them in the order that they come in. You can't do that. You have to read it carefully. Okay? All right, I have 3 more for you guys, but these ones are slightly different. They are more traditional word problems. Let me erase this. Okay, and I just want you guys to do the same thing. You do not have to solve them. I just want you to write how they would be set up. Okay, so for you guys at home, same thing. You don't have to solve them. I just want you to type to me how you would set these up. Okay, I'll give you guys like 3 minutes or so to type whichever ones you can get to, and then we'll go over them. Beautiful. Good. Now you can start.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's the one that the 37 and a half. Oh, sorry, on this one, 37 and a half. And on the second one, it's the one. Make sure you don't put anything over 100 unless it's a percent. So 90 is not a percent, it's just a number of students. That one's asking for you to copy.
I did?
Remember, guys, you don't have to solve it. You just have to show me how you would set them up, okay? Sorry, my finger's getting in the way of the camera. I'm gonna write the first 2, because these ones are pretty straightforward. Okay, for the third one, this one's a bit trickier. We know that the percent is 125, so that's 125 over 100. Where does the 28 go? Will it go on top or will it go on the bottom? Alice? Yes, it's actually going to go on the top and the X is on the bottom. Can you tell us why? Or how do you know that? Yeah. So the question is asking for the gas mileage in the city. It tells us that the gas mileage on the highway is 125% of what it is in the city. So here's our 125%. The 28 needs to be directly across from it so that you know that it is, this is the highway and on the bottom is the city. Okay? And that one's a bit trickier. You have to read that one very carefully to make sure that you have those in the correct order. There. Okay, any questions about using a proportion for these types of problems? All right, so for your homework tonight, like I was saying, you're going to use the proportion to solve all of the problems on your homework. Okay? Tomorrow I'm going to show you a new method, but for tonight's homework, you're going to use a proportion for every question that's on there. Okay?